couldn't remember what Rhino stood for a minute.
Welcome to the show. I'm Richard Fields. On the program this evening, we have Joshua Thompson, who is the principal attorney at Pacific Legal Foundation, and John Cameron, the author of Rewire and Rekill and the owner of CustomSalesTraining.com. I think the biggest story of the week, superseding the election, superseding everything else, is the fact that Apple's Tim Cook has said no to a judge who has ordered Apple to provide a backdoor into the iPhone owned by one of the perpetrators of the San Bernardino terrorist murders of 14 people in San Bernardino. John, is Tim Cook right in this situation, or should he turn it over?
Oh yeah, that's my applause for Tim Cook.
You don't have any sympathy at all for the 14 victims and the fact that there could be any number of people that could be implicated in those crimes if the FBI had access to that particular iPhone?
Well, the problem is that the FBI's argument is not just, well, with this, there's technical issues and there's legal issues and there's technical legal issues. So, or moral issues, I guess. I don't really understand the legalities. Joshua's got the legalities. So, and it's a property rights issue. I would hope that one day PLF would start taking some of these on. So, in the past, Apple has given the government access to pieces of hardware. Now, the problem with the newest version of the iPhone is that it has to be kind of systematically unhackable, because Apple Pay and the fingerprint ID, the biometrics on it, can only be relied upon if a backdoor doesn't exist. And those two things are a huge part of why this iPhone is such a big part of its business model. So if you allow a government stooge to have a key to get into a phone, they will use that key to get into every phone, because the state, Nietzsche said, the state, everything says is a lie and everything has stolen. And the state has shown over and over again that even if not given permission, it will spy on people, and it will ignore court orders to stop spying on them and continue to do so. But the other point is this. Osama bin Laden, everybody remember him, I hope, had a satellite phone. And some politician said, we can track a satellite phone. And somehow that got out in the news media. So what Osama bin Laden did was he used his satellite phone to provide disinformation to the CIA, because they relied on technological intelligence rather than people intelligence. And he went old school. He used tradecraft to have couriers deliver messages, memorize messages, one courier, the dead drop, all the stuff that is impenetrable unless you have human intelligence. So anybody in their right mind now, or even people who are insane, because insane people do terrorist acts, will realize that no technology is safe from government tampering or government hacking or government overview, and they'll simply stop using it. So the only way the government's arguments work would be if people did not know that the government had access to the phone. That is the only time. The head of the NSA flat out lied and said, if we had ways around encryption, we could have prevented what happened in Paris. No, because if the terrorists knew that you had ways around encryption, they wouldn't have used their phones, and you wouldn't have been able to take that information to stop what happened in Paris. They'd use a dead drop. They'd use a note. They'd use a substitution code. So now that they know that the government's saying, give us this back door, and nobody is going to use that stuff to do it. So there is no benefit to the government going forward to have access.
Yeah, I mean,
and going backwards, the crime's already happened. You can't stop it.
Yeah, I mean, the history,
so it's a
of course.
specious argument.
The history, of course, is that Apple before the latest version or two of the iPhone did cooperate with the FBI.
Well, I'm glad they're drawing the line in the sand now. I'm
70
glad
times.
they're doing
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think to address the legal point briefly, I think if you're subject to a warrant and you're able to do something, you have no choice but to comply. And so Apple, when subjected to a warrant to release information that it had, it complied with the court requirement. What the government is doing here, I'm reminded of what my friend Jim Masrick said, is that they're creating a backdoor. Imagine if you had a house and they were creating a backdoor to your house. The government can just enter it when it feels like everybody would view that as a Fourth Amendment violation. And to do it with your phone, which is also your personal property, should have no different scrutiny. And something to create a mechanism for which the government can simply access without warrants your personal property.
But they
should be-
wouldn't do that, Joshua.
Well, yeah, and the thing to remember, of course, is that this particular version of encryption took place after Edward Snowden revealed that Google and Apple and Facebook and all the rest were being compromised on a continuous daily basis indiscriminately by the NSA. That's when Apple got serious about encryption and put in the basically the self-destruct technology that says after you try to force your way in through random passcodes 10 times, it erases.
Well,
All of that goes away.
That's been around for about 30 years. But the software that if you try to hack the password a number of times, banks have used similar software.
I saw it on
and all the rest of
Inspector
it.
Gadget when I was
But it hasn't been effective. This is an effective encryption. And the problem with this is if you even if the government got the backdoor into the phone, within the phone there are at least 3 programs that you can use, encryption programs, that are unhackable. So you get into the phone, fine, and then you run into encrypted data inside the phone, and then you get past that if you possibly can. If they give you a backdoor, you run into other encrypted data. So basically, the government's just using this as an excuse to have overwatch and power and big brotherhood over citizenry. It's not going to do them any good, even if it was morally right, which it is not.
Wasn't there a court order recently that told the NSA that they had to stop doing a lot of the things that they were doing?
Yes, there was a appellate decision.
Yeah, okay. So this is a case, it's a high-profile case. It's a case where there's a lot of public sympathy for the victims. I think the case was particularly and specifically chosen as the case to lay down the gauntlet to Apple and tell them to basically not to give them the backdoor, but to
Create,
develop, write the software for a backdoor, write software that now doesn't exist for a backdoor to get into the
And it's
phone.
machine code. And these pieces of silicon are now designed around the code. So the combination of hardware and software now is, before hardware and software were independent, you had your hardware and you slapped your software on it, but at the machine code level, to do the things they're doing, they're designed hand in glove. The hardware maker and the software maker, in this case they're both Apple, on their phone chips, they create their own phone chips, I think, and they're 64-bit encryption. So in essence, they're asking to rewrite probably $1 billion worth of development in order to get at that. So I guess the government could write them a check, but it would still be morally wrong. Who's going to pay for it? Is the government going to pay for it? Does anybody know?
I think you're going to pay for it, John.
Well, I'm paying for it right after I leave, probably. Yeah.
This, of course, has already turned into a political issue. Trump has come out and said, hack the phone. I think Cruz has come out and said, hack the phone. And I'm guessing all the rest of the Republicans. I'm not sure what the Democrats stand on it. But it's turned into a political campaign issue in the presidential politics.
As well it should.
And the interesting thing I see going on in the mainstream political party races right now is, first of all, the doom of dynasty politics in the Republican Party. The dynasty candidates, the Rhino candidates. I'm talking about Rubio, Bush, Kasich, Christie, all of the rest of the establishment candidates are sucking wind in the presidential primaries. The field has been led in the polling by Trump most of the campaign season. Cruz won Iowa, Trump won New Hampshire, and in the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll, it shows Cruz actually winning nationwide, 28% to Trump's 26%, with the highest establishment candidate being Rubio with 17%. The guy with the most money, Jeb Bush, is trailing with 4%. What's he doing in there anymore?
But Jeb's doing better, you know, I mean.
Better than
he-
3,
He
huh?
he might get up to like 6 or 7.
Yeah,
or
good, could
8,
happen.
yeah.
So tell me, are we looking at a complete upending of the Republican Party as
Why-
we've known it?
Joshua? you-
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you are seeing a public that is fed up with the status quo. I think that's the only rational explanation for Trump support, that it's anti-establishment, and it also helps explain the lack of appeal for the establishment candidates. I suspect that it's more of an anti-status quo vote than it is, although if you ever get into a conversation with a trumpet, that's what I call Trump supporters. They are very adamant in support of their candidates, so maybe I'm not being fair, but
What do they, why? Did you ever ask them, did you ask them why?
I've stopped.
Yeah.
It's beating your head against the wall. I've experienced, but he is certainly not an establishment figure. He's willing to say things that others would never say, and to a certain extent, that's refreshing. That you're not bogged down by political correctness or what you think is appropriate. It's just that
Or
not being
IQ?
it's not- the problem is that what he says is actual nonsense.
Well, nonsense or offensive or just plain
Yeah.
wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about building a wall and having the Mexicans pay for it. I mean, who's kidding who?
Yeah,
Well, we could pay for it out of all the tax revenue that they generate here in the U.S. Yeah, because nobody's even debating the fact that all the illegals here are net.
Tax
they're-
beneficiaries.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, agreed. And, I'm reminded of Libertarian Counterpoint. I can talk about these things, but there was a Penn and Teller skit where they, on their Libertarian show on Showtime, where they actually went to the local Home Depot, hired a bunch of day laborers to go out in the desert and build a wall. It was 10 feet high with barbed wire, double-sided fence, and they built it about, 10 feet long, 10 feet high. Took the laborers all day to do, cost them about $5,000. And then at the end of the day, they said they broke the 6 people into 3 groups of 2. 2 of them went over the wall, 2 of them went through the wall, and 2 of them went under the wall. It took them each 2 minutes. So not only is it expensive, offensive, it is also ineffective.
I gotta watch that. Thanks for telling me about that. What's it called?
Penn and
and
Teller.
Teller what?
It's Penn and Teller Bull.
I'll just put in the wall, Bull Pucky.
Bull Pucky is
Yeah.
the name of the show.
Bull, rhymes with ship.
Yes. Well, it doesn't rhyme with it, but it starts with the same 3 letters.
Yeah.
It's a
Anyway,
hit.
the best we can say about the Republican primary contest is it's providing us a lot of comic relief.
Absolutely.
I
But the
still
Democratic-
find out that Trump's a ringer. That his job is to destroy the Republican Party. So, but it's a mistake
But
on the Clinton's part because
destroy the Republican Party for who? For
for
Hillary.
But
Or
Hillary's losing.
yeah, exactly. Bernie is winning or appearing to win in the
Let's-
Democratic Party.
well, let's talk
It was a
about-
dead heat in Iowa. Bernie won New Hampshire, and he's pulling it even in South Carolina and Nevada of all
I'm going to
places.
throw out a statistic, and normally I don't like statistics because I like stories because they have much more power. But in this case, I think the statistic is going to have some power. Of young women who list character as an issue that's important to them, what percentage of them voted for Bernie?
I'm going to say the vast majority.
91%. 91% of young women who were assumed before this election to be basically ducks. If you shoot pool, you shoot the ducks first, right? Women, I'm going to get most of the women. That's 40% of the vote. I only got to get, 10% more, and I can do that with minorities. 91% of young women who said that
Young
character
meaning
was
what, under
important.
34 or something like that.
young, I don't know what young, and
Yeah.
young to me is under 50, but hey,
Yeah.
you know, said, voted for Bernie.
You're talking about in Iowa and New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She has a serious issue when it comes to the truth, and she has a serious issue when it comes to women. And so I don't know how she's gonna, I bow to you because you suggested this was gonna happen. And I said, oh, no way, Hillary, she's got the power behind her, she's got the money, she's gonna kick.
Well, yeah, she's got the
But-
money in the Democratic establishment. Bush has the money in the Republican establishment, and they're both doing relatively poorly. The interesting thing about Hillary, of course, to me, is that
She's
I
criminal.
don't understand how you campaign for president while wearing handcuffs or prison orange. I don't understand how that works.
Well,
And
she
I
should be.
am not
Who's the head of
saying
the
that.
Justice Department while
I am-
she's running for president?
I am not saying that Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And there is no love lost between those two. That's perfectly well known. And whose political philosophy is closest to Obama's? Would it be Hillary's? And
All right, we're
pragmatist?
treading into conspiracy
No,
waters
no, no, no.
on the
I'm
counterpoint.
not conspiracy. I'm just speculating. If Obama wanted to, he could very easily say to the FBI, go ahead and indict. And they would, because there's enough people in the FBI that, that think they've got a good case there. I mean, the FBI is probably one of the least corrupt of the federal agencies. Not saying it's not corrupt, but less so than many of the
Well,
others.
if a Bush did something like that, one email message on a private server, and there would be, every newspaper in the country would be up in arms to have him impeached for violating the Official Secrets Act.
I'm just
Hillary-
saying, it's very probable that Bernie will end up being the Democratic nominee. Again, not
You're saying it's
establishment.
probable?
Probable.
Not gonna happen.
You don't think so?
I
So
think,
you're at the same place I was the last show. Tell me why. Why?
because I think Hillary's gonna clean up in the South. I think,
Well, we'll see. in the
yeah, I
next
mean,
week.
I don't really
You're
like
talking
to
about the
speculate.
black vote?
Yeah, she's certainly winning that vote right now, and I don't know. I hope Bernie wins. You mentioned
She
before
won't
that
win
this is
California.
comic relief, and if for fans of libertarianism and objectivism, Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged comes to mind. Maybe we should just be happy that we're burning the whole thing down. We have Trump on one side and Bernie Sanders on the other. It's time to let it happen, let it come down, and we'll build the libertarian paradise afterwards.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure it works that way, but we'll see.
No, I think the brown shirts would be in power.
Well, the other,
Long time
we
first.
talk a lot about Trump and we make fun of him and we scratch our heads because the trumpets, as you put
The
it,
trumpets.
don't care about facts. They just like the guy because he's sassy or something. But the other guy who is anti-establishment and legitimately so is Ted Cruz. This is a guy who upset an establishment candidate in the Republican primary in Texas to become senator. And once he got to the Senate, he didn't follow any of the rules. He didn't stay in the back row and mind his P's and Q's and wait his turn to speak. He started criticizing leadership, criticizing the Republican Party almost as much as the Democratic Party, and just made trouble from day one in the Senate. In fact, Bob Dole has said that Mr. Establishment has said he would rather have Trump as a candidate than Cruz. So he's just
Trump or
as
Cruz? He said,
he would rather have Trump over Cruz.
because Trump would be manageable? Is
Who
that-
knows? I'm just
Yeah.
telling you that Cruz is universally hated by the establishment politicians, particularly the Republican establishment in Washington D.C. and for understandable reasons. In fact, Thomas Sowell, Mr. Conservative Libertarian philosophy with great respect all over the country, has now come out and endorsed Cruz, calling Trump an overgrown spoiled brat. Is that an endorsement that's going to make a difference?
Civil liberties viewpoints are freaking scary, though, are they not?
Well, he's a conservative.
Well, when Thomas Sowell speaks, I think I listen. He's brilliant. His writings, his books. He's often been on the radio. He's a brilliant man, and I think his endorsement of Cruz carries a lot of weight in my eyes. I'm not a big Cruz supporter for many of his overly conservative tendencies. But I certainly agree with Thomas Sowell that Trump is an overgrown, spoiled brat, and I think it does speak, in my eyes, well to Cruz that he has been willing to stand up to establishment and is willing to say what he believes is right in spite of his party's beliefs. I think it can go a little far sometimes, and sometimes it seems to me like he's putting on a show, and that he likes to be the center of attention. He gets that attention by being contrarian when he really isn't sometimes. But that said, there's few candidates out there that are as smart as Cruz. He certainly has the legal mind to give me confidence that he would uphold most of the Constitution, but he's not going to win my endorsement despite the brilliant Thomas Sowell's endorsement.
So what about Barack Obama, our next Supreme Court Justice's legal mind? What do you think of that? Did he teach
not too
law?
highly.
Didn't he teach law? Wasn't he a great law professor, supposedly?
He was a law professor.
He was an adjunct professor for a while.
Of what, at a community college?
No, at
The
University of
University of
Chicago, a very, very highly ranked law school. But I think President Obama's legal philosophy is not a strict adherent to constitutional rights and constitutional values. I'm sure he has a certain intelligence of legal scholarship on the wrong side of the rights debate, but I don't think you could call Obama dumb.
No, not at all.
But Cruz definitely has the legal acumen to understand, and has demonstrated that he understands constitutional rights in the Constitution.
Okay, bringing up the final question as far as presidential politics, and then we'll move on to something else. If Trump or Cruz wins the Republican nomination and Sanders wins the Democratic nomination, or even if Hillary wins the Democratic nomination, following your
And I'm going to
prediction,
move to England.
will that open up the door for either a centrist like Bloomberg, who's been making noises about running
Centrist?
an independent run, or by Gary Johnson or whoever the Libertarians end up nominating at the LP convention?
Well, the two different answers to that. I think someone like Gary Johnson, who doesn't have the money necessary to get on television or to get the notoriety that he needs to compete heavily in states, has an uphill battle. As you know, I was involved in a statewide campaign with a Libertarian candidate where we received over 10% of the vote. It was a record at the time for an LP candidate, probably still is. And but we couldn't afford television ads, and we raised over $500,000, but still that paled in comparison to the $30 million raised by each major party candidate. And someone like Gary Johnson, who has he's a successful businessman, it's a couple $1 million, is not going to suffice to be competitive in our two-party system. Someone like Bloomberg, however, reminds me more of the Ross Perot type. He can throw enough money at this thing to increase his name recognition, to put TV spots out there, and to get invited to the debate. As we see, the American public will support Trump with 30% of the Republican
Yeah, Bloomberg could
party.
spend $1 billion and still have quite a few billion left.
Exactly, and so
And I think $1 billion would buy an election.
it would, and he has. Well, I don't know if he could get enough to win, but he would certainly be part of the conversation. He has experience. You can't say that again. He's a mayor of New York City for 8 years, and I think for obvious reasons I disagree with a lot of his policies. And but for the burn it all down mentality, a Sanders, Bloomberg, Trump scenario would be great.
Well, let's talk about Bloomberg's philosophy, because he's a cutthroat capitalist, a very successful businessman with supposedly a liberal ideology.
Well, he's a moat capitalist. He's a crony capitalist. He's got a monopoly on the Bloomberg terminal, which he got not through free market competitive acumen, but through political influence. That's how he made money.
I didn't know that. I should know that.
Yeah.
There's a hole in my knowledge. Now you've helped fill it. So it used to be Quotron, and now it's a Bloomtron, huh?
Well, the Bloomberg terminal, that's where he made his money, and that was something that was awarded to him through political influence as opposed to duking it out in the marketplace. So,
There's a lesson there. Maybe we don't allow political influence to influence the marketplace and we get better service.
if we could only hope. Moving on beyond politics, we've got a couple minutes left. You want to talk, I think, Josh, about the Montana state bar on religious school participation in scholarship tax credit programs.
It's a case that I'm very excited about that we at Pacific Legal Foundation have brought. We're representing a Montana family along with the Association of Christian Schools International and challenging a regulation in Montana that kills their brand new school choice program. The Montana legislature adopted a school choice bill that would allow parents to accept scholarships through tax credits for their kids to attend private schools. It will allow individuals, taxpayers in Montana, to donate and claim a tax credit on their tax bill and wouldn't have to fund the Department of Education. So there's a lot of great things about this scholarship program, just providing choice to parents and kids to go to the school that best fits their needs. But despite all of that, and despite the will of the Montana legislature, the Montana Department of Revenue adopted a regulation that said, in essence, you cannot use these scholarships to attend religious schools.
Where does the Department of Revenue get the authority to do something like that?
Well, because this is a tax credit and you're going to be writing $150 tax credit on your income tax bill, they get to develop the regulations on how this tax credit is implemented. And so the regulations that they devised prevent scholarships from going to religious schools. Of course, in Montana...
That's a policy issue.
Of course it is. And in Montana, a state with not a large population, there are really only sectarian private schools. There are a few Montessori schools that are secular, but all private schools in Montana are religiously affiliated. And so what this regulation does is it kills school choice in Montana in its tracks by preventing these scholarships from being used at the vast majority of schools.
And your suit will do?
Our suit is under the United States Constitution. We're bringing First and 14th Amendment claims. We're arguing that this is discriminatory on the basis of religion. They're singling out religious folks for disparate treatment and preventing people from exercising their beliefs because of what religion they adhere to.
You mean you're in favor of the free exercise of religion?
Absolutely.
That's a good thing to end the show on. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place on the Libertarian Counterpoint. www.accesssacramento.org, Channel 17 Sacramento, and on YouTube and on cable channels all over the place. Check your local listings. Thank you very much for being part of the show. We'll see you again next week.
On the mind of every thinking American.